how today's teenagers are learning about the mass murders in Rwanda. The episode in 1994 stands out as one of the most shameful in the history of the United Nations because, in the words of one of the soldiers, we did nothing. The sometimes almost impossibly complex business of how to make decisions as a peacekeeper is now something even school students can experience. The BBC World Affairs correspondent Mark Doyle has been exploring an alternative to the usual shoot-'em-up computer game.
The genocide in Rwanda saw people killed at a rate faster than during the Holocaust of the Jews in World War II. In all, some 800,000 Rwandans were systematically put to death in just 100 days. The whole affair was a desperate attempt by an extremist ethnic Hutu regime to hang on to power in the face of ethnic Tutsi rebel advances. The regime meticulously planned the murder of ethnic Tutsi civilians and Hutu moderates, all of whom were deemed to support the rebels.
They were just killing people all around you, everywhere. It was not possible not to look around you and not to see these horrible scenes, dead bodies everywhere. It was just horror.
United Nations peacekeepers were there, but far too few to stop the carnage.
It was mission impossible. Inadequate means, I mean number of troops and lack of money. 2,000 troops, it's not enough. I believe that there was no political will on the side of UN, on the side of superpowers, on the side of members of the Security Council. They didn't care.
I was reporting from Rwanda for most of those 100 days.
There may be worse battles and a worse humanitarian situation still to come for the population of the city that remains.
Today, in a very different setting, a school in Scotland is seeing what, if anything, can be learned from the terrible dilemmas raised by the tragedy. It's been a long journey from the Rwandan genocide of 1994 to this Edinburgh classroom in 2005. But the link is this, a remarkable new computer software program which is being used by this school to teach students about decision-making, citizenship and the tough choices which adults often have to make.
Emergency announcement! Emergency announcement! The presidential plane has just been shot down!
The new simulation, it sounds wrong to call it a computer game given the subject matter, runs a series of dilemmas similar to those the UN had during the genocide. Many computer games are violent and involve zapping an enemy. This, by contrast, is about saving people. Of course, in reality, very few Rwandans were saved, but that's reflected in the program too.
Hutu, kill all Tutsi!
First tested in schools in Canada, the simulation is now being piloted in Scotland as well. The idea is to use new media to develop the students' decision-making capacity and at the same time learn about one of the great events of 20th century history.
Kids are now using books less and less and reading less and less. And there are different kinds of learners, and this has been fairly clear for quite a while now. There's people who learn visually, people who learn through auditory stimulation, there's people who learn through reading text. Now, in this particular case, we're actually using all three of those different ways of getting to you.
The president might know something.
And if he doesn't know,
the UN could then be put in a really sticky situation.
If he doesn't act on it, then you can raid the stockpiles. If he doesn't act on what you've told him, then you can raid them.
The students engage with the program, Pax Warrior, here by facing a real-life decision made by UN commanders.
They've got guns, machine guns. They say they can kill 3,000 Tutsis an hour.
An informant tells the students, now playing the role of UN officers, that there are hidden arms caches, guns about to be distributed to Rwandan government militiamen who may commit genocide. The students have several choices. Do they risk confrontation and raid the arms caches, or should they ask for advice from UN headquarters in New York? Another option is diplomatic pressure on the president of Rwanda, hoping that that may stop the arms being distributed. every choice that's made has consequences for the rest of the simulation.
Which one are you going to choose?
Pick the Fax New York, and that's the safest one.
So why did you decide to do that?
Our mission is to not promote violence.
But does that relate to your ordinary everyday life? I mean, I know you're not in Rwanda and you're not UN commanders, but do you see any relation?
Well, they're much more extreme than any decisions we'd have to make or as teenagers we'd have to make. But it's quite good because it's more. It makes you aware of decisions that how your decisions can affect so many different things in so many different ways.
It really brings it home to you how much hangs in the balance, really, and how by doing one action it can just like tip off, I don't know, like start an avalanche, if you will.
What do you get out of this? I mean, apart from learning about what happened in Rwanda in 1994, what do you...
I think it's really helped us understand that there's not necessarily going to be any happy endings no matter what choice you take, and no matter how many good intentions you have, certain decisions are going to have bad consequences either way.
The headmaster of Edinburgh's James Gillespie High School sees the computer programme as a stimulating way of learning some modern history. He says there's much more to it than that.
This fits most comfortably into our citizenship programme. One of the national priorities is to ensure that we teach children what it means to be a good citizen, a good global citizen, not just a good citizen of this neighbourhood. And I think this allows us to give youngsters a real opportunity to develop some skills which will improve their social responsibility, improve their awareness of global responsibility, and hopefully contribute to them becoming better future citizens of the world.
To compare the simulation with the real thing, Newsnight invited a UN peacekeeper who served in Rwanda in 1994 to talk with the students. Along with a handful of other UN personnel, Marek Pazik, then a major in the Polish army, volunteered to stay on during the genocide to do what he could to save lives.
But in your opinion, as someone, because we can all look at the case studies and the principles and ideals behind it, but do you think the UN works?
Yes, of course, UN works. I bet sometimes you are not happy with your family, but it works. The same UN is working. Very often I was very unhappy with UN, but we have nothing better, and it's not possible even to divorce with UN. You have just this, and you have to do this. You have to cooperate. That's the only way. Just work for peace. That's all.
I was wondering if you ever wondered that no matter what decision you made, people were going to end up hurt.
In any given situation, you have to try. We believe that we managed to rescue around 20 up to 30,000 people from this disaster. Not too many, but we were a few. And then the lowest moment of the mission, we were just 200 soldiers. So 20,000 doesn't look bad.
When doing Pax Warrior, I think I was making the right decision, and I'd make the decision, and then I'd see the result and wish I'd made a totally different one. And I was wondering if when you made a decision when you're in Rwanda, or you saw people making decisions and you saw the outcome, the benefit of hindsight, if you would have liked to have changed the decision you made.
It's a very difficult question, but we have to deal with. We had to deal this on the spot, and we had no time to deliberate, to think a lot of. We just did what we had to do, and trying just to stay human. That's all. And later on, you can regret or not. That's all. I don't regret.
Quite apart from the huge numbers of dead in 1994, the fallout from the Rwandan genocide continues to this day, with millions of orphans and war refugees. So one has to ask whether Pax Warrior, even though designed as an educational tool, doesn't trivialize what has, for Africa, been an earth-shattering event.
I don't think it trivializes it. I think you have to be confident that the methodology you wrap around it is such that you allow for collaborative talk and collaborative thinking with youngsters, so the issues raised aren't left. It brings them to the front of people's thinking it's our job to ensure that that thinking is probed and questioned and given ample, space for people to talk.
The world has said never again many times, and many times has failed to honour those words. But communities that have suffered genocide, whether in the Nazi Holocaust or the killing fields of Rwanda, say one way of trying to prevent these dreadful events from happening again is by telling and retelling the stories. These students may have found a modern media version of more traditional monuments to the dead.
Mark Doyle. Now, coming up on the programme,